Yes, my name is Christine Gregory, and I'm the third vice president for the Phillis Wheatley Association. I've been on the Phillis Wheatley board, I just added up the years the other day, Richard, and it's like 28 years that I have served on the board here at Phillis Wheatley.
My name is Richard King. I'm the executive director for the Phillis Wheatley Association. I've been the director for about 4 years, Chris, now, but I was on the board for about 10 years with the Phillis Wheatley Association.
JANE EDNA was a visionary social worker whose main concern was the dignity and beauty and power of the Negro woman. And as such, JANE EDNA had a mission when she came to Cleveland to help young Negro women coming up from the South, because she was discriminated against when she came to Cleveland in housing and employment. So JANE EDNA knew that there were a lot of other young Negro women coming up from the South who needed help. And so she was a visionary.
Chris, I agree with you. Jane was a visionary. In fact, she migrated from Pendleton, South Carolina. She was born in the late 1800s on the Pendleton, South Carolina Woodburn farm, I believe. It's a plantation, previous slave owners there. And she came to Cleveland, and she befriended the millionaires back then. The Rockefellers, Henry Sherwin-Williams, and so forth. And she was able to get donations to build what you see today, the 9-story building. This building was built in 1937, and it housed women that were migrating from the South. And she did that with other women and other men back in those days. And other donors also donated, and the Board of Trustees back then did a few capital campaigns, but most of the money was raised from major donors as such. And she also was a nurse. She was a nurse, she was a social activist, she was a lawyer. She graduated from Cleveland State Marshall School of Law, and she was well-rounded, and people respected her in Cleveland and such for decades.
During JANE EDNA Hunter's initial establishment of Phillis Wheatley, she was the voice, the face of Phillis Wheatley. She did have prominent men and women of Cleveland, as Richard said, working with her. And I know when I came on the board, at that time, Phillis Wheatley had only had, in all of the 100 years, 3 executive directors. And JANE EDNA was the first one. Tommy Patty was the second one. And I can't remember, I think Juanita Story was also one of the executive directors here. But that is interesting because that's how solid the organization was with leadership. Now, there were a lot of prominent Cleveland people who supported JANE EDNA Hunter during the time. John Bustamante, Judge Alvin Krenzler, Attorney Seth Taft. I mean, she had lots and lots of prominent Clevelanders who supported the agency. Now, she did catch some flack back then because even though the white WCA did not accept black women, some of the black prominent people in Cleveland thought that when she opened this Working Girls Home Association, it was like Jim Crow and taking a back seat to the white WCA. But if you think about her mission and vision back there and the number of women she helped, in spite of people thinking that she was starting this Jim Crow organization, is just phenomenal, just phenomenal.
Yes, the mission of the Phillis Wheatley Association has changed over time. When JANE EDNA Hunter came to Cleveland, the original mission was to help African-American women migrating from the South to find housing and also do job training. She did that very well with a group of other folks in the community. And then over time, that changed immensely. In the late 1960s, what happened was Phillis Wheatley realized that housing for African American women was decreasing. And so what they did during that time period, the mission changed and it focused on seniors. And that started around, I believe, around 1972 through a HUD grant. And Phillis Wheatley at that time was able to set up subsidized housing for seniors. Fast forwarded to today, the mission is still the same, to provide housing for seniors and also adults with disabilities, but we're evolving again with changes in our missions to actually help other nonprofits in the community now through grants that we would issue to support their mission, so we're expanding our operations. I see similarities with the African American Cultural Garden and the mission and what we do. Primarily, our founder, JANE EDNA HARRIS, indicated that education was key. Key to the future. An endowment is also key, financial endowment to support education in the future of our African Americans in the community. So there's some similarities there, as well as helping African Americans to achieve their potential. And we did that a number of ways, because as we evolved over time, we had schools, daycare here, where we taught the kids in the community. We had a music school as well to teach them the cultural aspects of that. We had a camp out in Peninsula, Calgary Valley National Park, and we went through rites of passage with the youth out there, and we taught them how to have survival skills and so forth, which when we talk to alumni people today, they said those skills were valuable in their professional career, what they learned at Camp Mueller. Ways people can get involved now to help the Phillis Wheatley Association. We have the senior program here and affordable housing for seniors and adults with disabilities. We also have the congregate meal program that we're starting back up coming out of the COVID pandemic. And we're looking for additional funding there to help us. We're looking for volunteers. We're going to hire additional cook and so forth for the program. But you can get involved through volunteering for that program, also through the Cleveland Food Bank, where we have the monthly commodity box program, the food pantry, and so forth. We have that once a month as well. And so we need volunteers there to unload boxes and set up and so forth and help distribute food to not only the residents in our Emeritus House apartments, but also the community, because they do come out as well. So those are the areas that we need, and we can always use the donations submitted directly to the Phillis Wheatley Association as such for our future efforts as we expand our services to include grants for other nonprofit organizations to help them fulfill their missions in the central community and the broader Cleveland area.
And, you know, Richard is speaking from the standpoint of staffing and the services here at the agency. But even more important are board members. I think all nonprofits are interested in having members serve on the board. Phillis Wheatley is no different. We just at our annual meeting brought on 5 new board members. Well, we need even more because our vision is we have different committees, and we would like to establish these committees so that each board member has the responsibility for a particular committee, like fundraising, community development. We have just these standing committees that we do need more board members. And it's very rewarding. I mean, I've been on this board 28 years, and I'm here to tell you there is nothing like helping other people accomplish their socioeconomic positions here, you know, in these United States, even though it's hard. But when I think about Jane Edna Hunter and what she did, gosh, I'm just always inspired to help other people. That's what Phillis Wheatley is about. We still have a mission and a vision to help our neighbors.
Yes, as far as, you know, helping the agency and the board of directors and so forth, and helping others, I'd like to elaborate on others. That was a prayer that our founder repeated throughout her career, throughout her lifetime. How could she serve Jesus and also help others? And that's been her forte. She has served, she was a servant leader, and that's ingrained in all of us here. How can we better serve the community. As leaders, we're servants, actually, and we're here to help not only just the central community, but the surrounding Cleveland area as well. So that others is very important for us to realize that that's the basis of this organization. We serve and we serve others, and we want to do it well with the help of the community. The Phillis Wheatley Association was founded in 1911 for African American women for housing and job training. We're located at 4450 Cedar Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio, in the central community. Typical day here, we have programs for our seniors, services, we have activities outside, community activities. People rent our facilities to host weddings. We've actually had an opera here. We've had concerts, we've had other events in our gymnasium that we have. And we also have activities on our second floor for the seniors. We have other agencies coming in to provide cultural arts, training and services. We have wellness checks, screening and so forth for our seniors here. And we also have cooking classes. We've held that here as well for the seniors on healthy eating. Typical day again, we have the congregate meal program that meets 5 days a week, and we serve a hot meal, a hot nutritious meal, meeting USDA requirements for all of our seniors and those in the community as well. And that is a bustling time during the day, and it serves them well also. What else did we do here? We had a music school. The music school is now no longer functioning, but we're looking at repurposing our music school and daycare into a youth cultural arts center. And we already have a tenant in there, Golden Ciphers, who is a youth and cultural arts nonprofit operation as well. And we're also looking down the road at our facility here, the 9-story building we have. We're looking at rehabbing the building. It was rehabbed back in 2007 for about $10 million. And now we're on the next phase, so we want to do some upgrades here and have this a state-of-the-art senior building for our seniors in the community. And then we also want to look at youth aging out of foster care. Our Founders Home, which is right next door to the music school and daycare, we want to look at getting some historic funding there and put it on the National Registry of Historic Places, similar to our building here that houses the seniors. It's on the National Registry of Historic Places as well. Okay.
Well, you know, it's interesting that JANE EDNA, when she originally came to Cleveland, she established a 23-room home at 40th and Central initially for the women. And she started a membership for a nickel, just so she would not leave anyone out. And so, and by the way, I'm sure you've heard of her autobiography, A Nickel and a Prayer. But she started the 23-room house for a nickel a week. And the women came, she taught them, and then she had a capital campaign that resulted in John D. Rockefeller actually giving $100,000, and that was a lot of money back then, to establish this location here. And so that's how this location has evolved into a 9-story seniors building. And on top of just serving the women coming up from the South, it became a community service center that focused on youth, not just the women, but youth, seniors, and recreational activities. You'll find a lot of people who say, oh, I attended Phillis Wheatley. In fact, our former board president said he learned the two-step here at the Phillis Wheatley Association. Yes, and his mom attended here. So you'll hear a lot of the older people here in Cleveland talk about the Phillis Wheatley Association and also Camp Mueller. And so that's how from a 23-room house that Phillis Wheatley evolved into the location that we have today.
The Phillis Wheatley Association, that was a name given to this organization by our founder, JANE EDNA HUNTER. She named the agency after the first African American poet, Phillis Wheatley. So that's how the name came about as such.
And we also have to remember that the building down on 30th, the 36th, and
Yes, the social service
yeah,
building.
the social
Yeah,
service
that's true.
building is named after Jane
Jane
Edna
Edna
Hunter.
It's the Jane Edna Hunter Service Center. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Social Service Center, yes. This building is called Emeritus House. That's where the seniors and adults with disabilities live. And this building is actually on the National Registry of Historic Places in the United States. And when the building opened up in 1927, thousands of people from different states, local citizens, politicians, and leaders, they all gathered for the grand opening. And it was unbelievable because this was the first major establishment for African Americans in the city of Cleveland, and it made national news during that time. And you'll be able to see from the archive photos that we have how significant that was. Our founder, Jane Edna Hunter, did not have an easy time in Cleveland. When she came here, she encountered many types of racism and other problems associated with taking decent women off the streets, okay, and giving them a home as such, and doing job training. She received threats on her life and other problems associated with the racism during that time period. And so she weathered the storms, and she survived, and she was a survivor. And she rallied others around her, and she was able to enlist the help of major donors and supporters of other leaders in the community. She even had Booker T. Washington at that time involved with the agency at the onset. And so other community leaders too, nationwide, they were involved with the efforts here. In fact, later in life, she started the National Phillis Wheatley Foundation, which had affiliates throughout the United States. And the last one that's operating now is in, I believe, Greenville, South Carolina. And it's also called the Phillis Wheatley Association. Right. But this was the national headquarters also of the Phillis Wheatley Foundation.
And it's interesting too that even back then, Jane Edna Hunter was an astute businesswoman, because a lot of the donations and monies that she received, she invested wisely. And even today, those investments are still generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in a scholarship fund that's managed by Key Bank. And there's several board members that were on that committee. And every year we give out the residual of those dollars. So 100 years later, and her money is still working for her.
Yes.
It's interesting when you look at the financials and you see the investments that she made back then, that we're still reaping the benefits of. And these scholarships we give out annually to, and she specifically set it up for women attending college in Ohio and South Carolina. And we just need the world to know that her money is still making money. And we are still helping women with the monies that she invested those years ago.
And it's the scholarship itself is administered by College Now of Greater Cleveland. And usually it's in April each year.
Usually the deadline
in
is
April of each year. And it's called the Jane Edna Hunter Scholarship. And so we would like to put the word out there so everybody would know that, and to make sure they submit the application. It's online, and they can go again to the Cleveland, the College Now of Greater Cleveland.
Right.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leon Bibb.
The African American Cultural Garden, one of the many cultural gardens on Martin Luther King Drive, celebrates the African American experience. Part of the garden is already completed on the upper level. It represents the past with the door of no return. You can walk between the black granite walls and imagine the fearful experience of those taken from Africa in tight quarters on slave ships.
This is Danita Harris from News 5. What has not been built yet is a channel for water that cascades down the hill, representing the Middle Passage on the Atlantic Ocean. It leads to a black granite terrace that will host events. It is etched with the Little Dipper and the North Star, which guided thousands of enslaved people to freedom in the North.
I'm Wayne Dawson. The water will continue to flow down the hillside in reference to the Ohio River and the Great Lakes that facilitated the journey to a better life. It also marks the continued struggle of black people to the present. The garden will end at Martin Luther King Drive. The entire structure will symbolize the spirit and tremendous resilience of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents who came from the South to a better life in the North.
This is Harry Boomer. The future platform beside the MLK Boulevard's walking trail will have benches and a water feature that gives homage to our past and hope to our future generations that anything is possible regardless of the challenges.
This is Obi Shelton. Let's finish it. The African American Cultural Garden has a portion already built at the top of the hill. With your help, it will cover the entire hill as a magnificent tribute to those who came before us, as well as a symbol of pride and hope for future generations. We need your donations of money, time, and energy to make it happen. Everybody can contribute something. We can do it. Click the support button to get involved. Let's finish it.